dosage. It's basically, you've heard in the news all about how there's an opiate epidemic sweeping the nation, and people are overdosing and taking way too much opiates. What morphine equivalent dosage does is it takes any pill that contains opiates in it and compares it to 1 milligram of morphine.
When you say pill, tablet, gel, I mean, what?
One unit of, yeah. It could be a pill, it could be 5 milliliters of a substance, or 1 milliliter of a substance. In some cases, it's a 24-hour patch that you put on your arm. But that 24-hour patch will have a dosage equal to the amount of morphine as if you were taking a direct injection of morphine over that same 24 hours. And that will be contained inside this new section on the form called MEqD. When you roll over this new tooltip, you'll get a nice explanation of what's going on here. But basically it's what I just described. MEqD is morphine equivalent dosage. A claimant has a MEqD score, which is a combination of the different MEqD values for different prescriptions they might be taking, because they probably aren't taking one pill per day in one prescription. They're taking one pill of acetaminophen, and then they might have oxycodone at the same time, so you need to combine that all together. And that is here in the claimant score section. So right now, the first one is 45. That means he's currently at a 45 score. And if this med would be filled, he would raise up to a 90 score. 90 is the CDC suggested limit. Here at AWPX, we are using more, looking at our claimant size, and we determined 180 to be our highest, so that's a red level. Anything between 120 and 180 will be yellow, and anything below 120 will be green. But those are subject to change as we implement this and see how it works. Biggest thing you guys need to know is that if the projected level goes into that red, be it 180 or 150 if we change it later, they will no longer have the ability to select additional fills. And I'll get into that in a bit, but that's basically that same months approved that used to be there. We renamed that to additional fills, and here's an example. Actually, here's an example of that happened. So, if this oxycodone pill got filled, they were currently at 150. After the fill, they would be at 240, so they go into the red. As you can see up here, next to additional fills, it has a blinking red arrow saying the claimant's projected MEqD is above 180. As such, additional fills are not allowed, and if I click on this button, it doesn't allow it. This is just to make sure that the adjusters know that this person is at a very high level.
One of the reasons we've got Chris here in front of you and we're making a big deal about this, over 20 years having a PA form, we've never prevented anyone from doing something like this. The whole idea has been, hey, you want to pay for it, you want to reject it, you need some help, pretty much like the total freedom. Now we're saying you can approve it, but because of what's going on, we're going to control your approval. The highest decision makers are our biggest clients are aware of this, they know what's going on, but the end users are
Individual adjusters might not know about it, and they might be complaining directly to you, so we wanted to make sure you knew before you're like, what? But as Jay just mentioned, one of the most important things, in case they do call, is we are not preventing that current fill to be filled. It's no way preventing that current medication from being filled at the pharmacy. We're just not allowing them to automatically authorize additional fills down the line. That's the only change that they're making.
Kind of an alert for them, hey, you know, do you really want to do this?
Right. And so this actually gets back into one of the other changes that we're making. This section right here used to be called months approved. It's now changed to additional fills. The default value, instead of being just blank and so you didn't really know what it did, says current fill only. And the drop down now contains 1 through the same values from before, but this would be previous the way I understood it. If it was 2 months approved, but it was a 10-day supply, that would actually, you guys would then have to calculate out, that's like 6 fills. This way, it's whatever they specify, that's exactly what we submit to the adjudication platform as number of refills allowed.
Which means you guys now have to pay more attention to the day supply on the prescriptions.
Well, yeah, we need to probably update the training manual for both platforms on the creation of a PA process.
And
Different ways.
now one thing related to this, let me see if I can see it real quick. If we come in here to AeroPoint, but we need one that doesn't have,
That's what.
if you know, actually it's not implemented here.
Well, I'm gonna go do it in production and go through.
One of the big things AeroPoint has requested is they don't want their adjusters to be able to submit up to 48 months.
I think
48
it's nothing
films.
beyond 6, I'm like double
Right.
checking Charlie.
It's
And
up to
it's
6.
up to
So
6.
more than likely you could get a on Tuesday
Are you
or
in
Wednesday.
what order?
UAT.
I'll fix it in UAT.
Yeah. You'll get a question, why can I no longer approve this for 12 fills? Like, I could do that yesterday. And you'll just tell them that that's what your company has determined as reasonable amount of extra fills, because they want you looking at this again after a certain amount of time. The other, let me just make sure I don't have anything else major here. Okay. The other thing you might see, and it's very hard to find an example, but you might see it and they might ask you, is sometimes the claimant will have a like 20 here, and then their projected is also 20 even though the med contains opiates. This is, and if they ask why is this the case, why isn't it increasing it like it should, this is because we allow a 3-day grace period at the end of a current fill to be allowed to be refilled for the next fill. So for example, if you had a 30-day fill, you filled it on April 1st. If you go back on April 29th to get that refilled, it's basically exactly the same fill, so it really shouldn't count against you because you're just making sure you have pills there on May 1st. So as long as they do it in that 3-day end grace period at the end, it won't count against them and they can still do stuff like do additional fills, even if normally that would push them over. And it's basically, they just will be like, why does it say exactly the same even though it contains opiates? Even on medications that do not contain opiates, that section will be available. So if we look here, but it'll say contains no opiates, and in that case it will explicitly say no change because there's no possibility of a change.
Can I ask
Changed.
Okay, thank you.
a quick question?
Yep.
With ArrowPoint, so ArrowPoint's dropdown is going to be different than the other clients?
Yes, and it's configurable per client going forward, kind of like the reject reasons and need more info reasons are
Okay.
configurable.
Now, is it going to be different per regular PA
Per.
and mail
per
order?
It's, the change on the additional fills is per protocol guide. So all 3 values are at the
If it
protocol
uses
guide.
this form, it will be that way. If we find a place where it's not, let us know, and
Okay, so we still have to be careful, or steward, on mail order, because if they approve 6 additional fills,
that could be.
and they fill 3 months at a time, that's 369, that's going above the 6 months.
Well, yeah, no, that's correct. I mean,
They're allowed to in that case.
I don't know, but
Oh.
we'll make sure,
We'll
make
bring
sure
that up
Charlie
with,
knows.
no.
I'll be on site in a week anyway.
Okay.
So I just want to make sure the score would reset every 30 days, or?
Well, it would be whenever the prescription
Oh,
is
the
done.
previous
So if it
one,
was a
okay.
10-day fill, so basically every single night at midnight,
Hmm?
we look at every single claimant that is taking opiates
Yeah.
and look at each of their active prescriptions and use the values from those prescriptions to create a score for them by just adding that up. And that is actually inside this. So let me actually
But on the 27th day, that active prescription dies out.
no, it would be on the 30th day.
On the 30th?
Because up until that 30th day, they still have that. So if they were, one thing that might happen is they change the dosage of the opiate on day 27 to even something higher. In that case, that wouldn't fall in the grace period
Okay.
because it's a different drug.
Okay.
And that is going to be inside here. Where is it? Right here. Right here. What is an equivalent drug? An equivalent drug is a drug with an NDC that is different than the current drug, but for all intents and purposes is identical. Usually this happens because NDCs, like the pharmacies buy drugs in bulk. They buy 1,000 pack or a 5,000 pack and then they dole it out to you. If they bought a 500 pack, that has a different NDC than a 1,000 pack, which has a different NDC than a 5,000 packs.
Really?
So,
Yeah.
Right, overconfident.
Or if they buy from a different manufacturer.
or yeah, it could be ibuprofen 800. You can get that from 20 different manufacturers.
Perfect.
It's all exactly the same. So the Medispan, which is who we use for our pricing and for our products, provides what's called a DDID, which is it groups all drugs that are physically the same under the same umbrella, and that is how we determine equivalent dosages.
I got a question.
Yep.
It might be overcomplicating things, but for instance, what if
Everything you just over.
yeah, you're right about that. What if a claimant is receiving multiple meds, but the dates don't match up? So for instance, they get one med for a 2-week supply and another one for a month supply. When that filled, like that time period ends, is there gonna the
It's
score
per
gonna be
fill.
subtracted?
It's per day. Yeah, it's
Yeah, so-
recalculated from 0 every single day.
Alright.
So if the drug is still active, so if it was a 2-week supply and they got it on April 1st, on April 15th, that would no longer count towards the score. The 30-day one would still, because that one is still considered active.
Now, since this is new, right, there is potential for things to go wrong, right?
No, because we're back. We're
Always.
I mean, there is a chance, but it would go wrong in the wrong way. Because values haven't been applied to medications, not because it's addition. It would need to be calculated because by default everybody's 0.
Okay, yeah.
So if anything, some meds in the past would slip under because they didn't have their MEqD value scored,
Yeah.
and it would still be 0. But that shouldn't happen because basically we're doing all of last year's filled meds,
Okay, cool.
just for that reason. Now, one important thing to note, up here, if a claimant is in a red zone, but the drug itself contains no opiates, they're still allowed to do as many fills as they want because we want to encourage them to be using non-opiate medication. So the adjuster shouldn't be penalized, or it's not even penalized. They don't need to be made aware that they're not taking an opiate. So that is just one thing to keep in mind. The other major change that we're doing is we've implemented what's called the ODG formulary, which is a national workers' comp formulary for drugs that are typically prescribed to workers' comp claims. Over here on the right-hand side of the drug name, you'll see a small icon with a O in the middle. If the background is red, that means it's been classified as a drug that needs prior approval, usually from another doctor, or it depends on the state regulations. So adjusters will need to be aware of that. If it's green, that means it's allowed as a first-line treatment without prior approval. So that'll be the main difference between those two. At that same time, we've also implemented that same icon for other drug information that we have, such as for repriced meds. If it's been repackaged, there'll be a little R in there. For maintenance meds, which are meds that are defined as being usable for long periods of time, there'll be a blue circle with an M inside of it. So if the adjusters ask what these are, all that information will be inside here or in the pamphlet we've released to them.
Plus, if they hover over, it's gonna.
Yeah, plus, if they hover over like this, it says this is a repackaged med, and then this one.
And you still have the end drug, obviously.
This is actually replacing N-drug.
So we don't have end drug anymore.
Yeah, N-drug is being deleted from the system.
So what happened with the ISD,
What?
with the Dallas? They're always asking us, I guess they can just ask us or they don't ask us.
Well,
It's their
this
problem.
will this will only show up for states that have implemented this, and this is basically the national version of N-drugs.
Oh, okay.
So if you notice, like when I hover over this is Y here. If I come back into whatever form I open it up here, and
So it's governed by the states.
yeah, it's governed by the states.
I just had a talk with a guy in New York about that for like 5 minutes.
But it will only show up if the state itself, so for example here, this drug, will show up as N because the state of jurisdiction uses the ODG formulary. So here it's a red one. When they highlight over it, this medication is on the ODG formulary and is N. So this is basically a replacement of the N drug, and it should be more encapsulated. But now if this same drug I think this drug is being filled in Texas. If this same drug would be filled in Florida where the ODG is not required, this icon
It'd
would
be
not
free.
show up. No,
Oh,
would not
it
show
wouldn't
up.
show it at all?
It would not show it at all because they're not using ODG at all.
Oh, I see,
Good.
okay.
No screws here.
And then the last major change, not major, but potential change for you guys is down here, we no longer say brand, just brand. We now specify if we think that there are generic alternatives or not. If there are generic alternatives, it'll say something like, it will say brand with generics, and there is a chance on those that need more info, cases will be created from those, where we will need to reach back out to the doctor and try to see if this prescription can be rewritten with a generic
What's
alternative.
it gonna say like for Duexis and Vimova where they can get 2 scripts to replace the one with generic? That's too complicated.
I'm not, it might be in there, it probably isn't.
It probably is, because there really isn't a generic for Duexis. We
Right.
just know you can get the other 2.
Yeah, no, this is
It's really
if,
just Duexis, so,
Hmm?
I said it's really just Duexis.
Well, so
No, there's more.
Oh, yeah, there's a whole bunch
How-
We
of
see more
and
Duexis.
then how
Yeah,
often is
there's-
that going to be updated if there are new?
this is part of that Medispam file we get every single week, so every single Saturday, we should have the updated prices, updated lists, and that's how we figure out that it's brand with generics or not. So some stuff that should make your guys' life easier. The first one is we've added in a lot more links when viewing the form as an internal user. For example, if you need to go to the employer, you can automatically click on it and it goes directly there. Same with the pharmacy, if you need to get pharmacy information. So you won't have to take the information and do a
That's
new
like-
search inside Salesforce to find it. Same
And
with
doctor.
adjuster, doctor, everything. The places where I could identify that you guys might need a Salesforce object, I tried to.
That'll help with need
If
wars.
there's any places I forgot, let me know and we can always add it in a future one. One place I don't think we did was last field doctor, because we don't care about that one nearly as much as the current field doctor.
Did the claim number ever have a link?
I don't,
Oh, the
because it's better to go through the claimant and make sure you see all of theirs.
Alright,
The other thing that happened is, as you can see, the complete button is no longer along the bottom. It's now moved to the top, so now this isn't a great form to show it, but on other forms, hopefully that will be in the area you can see directly instead of having to scroll down and
Oh,
click
that's
on it and not being able to see what decision they made when trying to do it. On resend rejects, and there's also the complete no, so let's see, like this one. If there's a drop-down menu, so like this is a resend reject, the reason will be right to the right and it'll still have your usual values.
Just moved, yeah.
And there's not incomplete or something not completed, unable to complete with a reasons drop-down. Make sure you always, before you hit the button, select what the reason is, or else it'll be as none, and that's not useful 90% of the time. That's about it that I can think of. You guys have any questions?
Just be careful since we're used to that button being somewhere else. Don't hit the wrong button, please.
Things get stuck.
Don't hit reset reject instead of, complete or something like that.
Okay.
Alright.
Thank you very much,
Thanks.
Chris.
Thank you.